The abuse of anonymity. Well before the internet, there's always been a side to people where, whenever the most severe consequences are removed from a situation, they become roaringly confident. Not sure what I mean? Well, think about the difference in power a school bully wielded when he or she was in view of the recess monitor, or not. Or think about when you're in the car and there's nobody around to hear you describe in detail what you plan on doing to the slowpoke in front of you before throwing him screaming from a helicopter. The point is, when people can get away with speaking or behaving a certain way, they'll often go for it. And so that's where the internet plays a part, because it has a huge effect on how we communicate and converse these days. They're often known as keyboard warriors. People who mean to reap all of the benefits of having a large audience, but ostensibly avoid the advents of in-person feedback or consequences. People are generally uncomfortable, sometimes even terrified of speaking publicly. But a comment section or a Twitter feed focused on a hot topic seems to foster dozens, hundreds, sometimes thousands of viewpoints, with varying levels of presentation from articulate to bold to scathing to abusive. The human reality of mob mentality then seems to make things even worse. Granted, there is the odd example where somebody is so unbelievably horrid that they go viral and end up exposed or doxxed and have their lives completely ripped apart. But that's a small risk. When I mean there are few consequences, I mean there is no audience staring at them directly, judging the content of what they said. There is no hand going up for follow-up questions, questions the speaker would not have time to quickly look up on Google. And there is no bar of decency set by an audience of adults who would turn on and dismiss somebody who was throwing out insults and vile language. There is some response, though. There are people who comment back, but the keyboard warrior can choose to ignore them, having made their comment and be done with it. Or they can see the responses from the same place they made the initial comment in the first place, from behind the computer screen. See, the keyboard warrior, even though they may be rebuked on their comments, is still under the impression that they are safe from any real danger. A lot of people find this kind of attention to be enough to avoid a conflict online, but some people almost seem to want it. I'm talking about neurotransmitters, adrenaline, dopamine, etc. These are sometimes theorized to explain why people are always looking for a fight online. A human's need to be right or vindicated, or even just to get those adrenal glands pumping, can be tied to the brain, conspiring on to urge the behavior of the keyboard warrior. Now, I'm not an expert on any of that, so I don't want to dive too deep here, but it does make some sense as to why this thing becomes so constant, almost habitual to some folks with their online interactions. And you know, normally, I wouldn't really care about any of this. It's fairly easy to avoid conflict online. For one thing, just go ahead and delete Twitter. I mean, my God. And secondly, just try to be mindful about what you say, and distance yourself from people who are clearly just trying to instigate something with you, or thumping their chest knowing that you can't look them in the eye, stare them down, and judge them in person when they call you a nasty name. Online can make it easy when it comes to ignoring people. I think where the real trouble comes in, though, is that it's having a noticeable effect on how people talk when they're not online. This is simply my own observation, but people I know who spend too much time fighting and needling with people on the internet develop some bad habits in communicating when they are in person. I'm certainly not going to call anyone out, but to summarize, in most of these folks, I see an unshakable need to be right about everything, to the point where conversations are really just presentations meant only for the listener to affirm and agree. Any questions to the contrary or alternate points of view are strictly cut off or met with offense. Demanding where my sources of information are from, interrogating me about the true sociological motives behind my preferences, and being told that I am brainwashed or ignorant to the big picture. And every conversation has to be framed as a major issue. Mundane, friendly banter has no place with them anymore. A conversation about, the NHL draft would have to turn into some hostile debate, lest the topic be dismissed immediately. What a shame. But, conceding that nothing is really going to be done in the short term about the perils of online communication, when it comes to keyboard warriors, just don't be one. So just think about what you want to say, like you normally would if you were talking, and build real confidence. Not the twisted mirage of confidence that one can adopt online. That's actually part of why I started Conversation Flex, to offer a bit of perspective on this very type of thing. I hope it helps. But beyond that, for the next few weeks, I'm going to shore up a multi-part series on public speaking. Buff up some of that real confidence I mentioned before. It's something that I specialize in, and I can tell you that nobody wants to mess with somebody who can talk comfortably and effectively to a real live audience. Unless, of course, they're online.